you can buy these kits. They're used as sensory testing kits, and you can buy them. They come with these little vials, and you just put a couple of drops into your beer. You get a very neutral sort of beer that doesn't have much other flavor going on, and then you can taste all the different. There's one that tastes like, it smells like a soiled diaper. There's one that smells like vomit. There's one that smells like feet. It's fascinating. That's where the next frontier of craft beer is, my friends.
Diaper beer.
Welcome to Muttering Pines, the show where we fumble our way through the outdoors and try and do stuff with our hands.
Hello, boys.
Hello.
Hi. I'm going to get to it.
All right.
Matt, you cracking a Neo Citron?
Just end of a tea. So, because I'm poorly planned.
And he's gone again. 8 minutes to get headphones hooked up, and then he's fucking gone.
He's, it's an important prop tonight to have a drink.
That's true.
I think.
I was debating Matt's ability to drink tonight with him slow sicking for the last 3 weeks.
I love this. You have to explain what slow sicking is, I think.
Slow sicking? So basically, we all went on a weekender, and my oldest had some fucking nightmare virus, which I think now we figured out was probably that respiratory one, but, neither here nor there. Came back, and my kids got it like hard. Whole family was out. I managed to stave it off for about a week, and then I got it. But since then, like, Matt has been slowly getting like symptom by symptom, but one at a time and not too terrible for 3 fucking weeks now. He's just been slowly stepping 1 foot further and further into the grave. So slow sicking.
So what kind of, like, you coughed and then you had a day of sneezing and then you had a day of feeling like shit?
Yeah, and I think each one of those was like 3 days long. And what was worse is the past week has been absolutely drained of energy. Muscles are sore, like knees are sore, body sore for no reason, and mentally incompetent. Like,
yeah, but that's not because of like that. That's just
it's a good excuse though.
I've been sick most of my life, if that's the symptom.
just ridiculous. I just can't think. It sucks.
All right. Well,
I have a job that relies solely on my brain capacity. That's going to be good.
You'll be fine.
Cheers, fellas. Matt's got a what there? Oh, Pabst. Good one.
Yeah, let's see how this tastes.
Mm-hmm. Scott, what are you drinking?
Yeah, I don't actually know what I'm drinking. I thought that I was drinking an Annex drink, but it's actually a Village drink. I'm drinking a crispy blonde ale. It's delightful.
You know who we're having on tonight, right?
And
yeah, I do.
Why I am drinking this wonderful IPA from Cabin.
That's really nice. Sunshine Rain.
Sunshine.
I wonder
Rain.
who makes that.
I'm pretty sure it's Annex.
That's right.
Oh, look, our guest dropped off. On that note, well, I'm going to have a drink first. We can skip most of the bullshit because we've already wasted enough of this gentleman's time. We have, again, duped somebody into reducing their social clout. And as we discussed, Scott, doing some net zero marketing.
That's right.
Or in
he's
that
going
case,
to speak to us for a little while, and he's going to pay nothing, and we're going to pay him nothing. And in the end, nobody's going to see it. And
it's going to increase his sales, nothing.
Zero. That's right. It's the
most
risky marketing endeavor of the year.
He'll be able to write it off because he'll lose customers based on his appearance here. However, this guy is an old friend of yours, Scott. Mm-hmm. He's a wonderful gentleman, and he's
knows how to actually do a thing.
He knows how to do stuff successfully, and I find he's surprisingly Canadian for technically not being a Canadian, or
That's
from
right.
here, anyways. We are talking tonight with Haydon Dews from Cabin Brewing.
Hi, Haydon.
Who's muted?
Well, hello, gentlemen.
There it is. Hey, buddy.
Right,
How are you doing?
right, no mute buttons. No.
Mic problems across the board tonight.
Thanks for having us on. Nice to see you all.
Thanks for
Good to see
coming
you
on.
too. We often have people on that know how to do things, but we're not actually going to talk to you about how you do cabin brewing. We're going to talk to you about the brewing you used to do when I first met you, which was brewing at home. Which just today you told me when you started doing that, and I was really surprised. I thought it was a recent endeavor for you, but you've been into this home brewing for a really, really long time.
Yeah, it was back in, what did I say? It was my second year at university back in Wellington in New Zealand. So that was 1994 was the first year I brewed beer. And it was in my little shitty student flat, literally we have electric blankets in New Zealand that you plug into the wall and keep your bed warm because the place is so cold because there's no insulation or central heating. And just wrapped it around and put it in the little footwell of my desk in my room and then just covered it with cardboard and sort of let that go. It was terrible.
1994 might have been the first time I drank a beer, let alone tried to make a fucking beer.
I've been drinking beer for years at that point.
An electric blanket wrapped around what?
It's like a fermenter or a carboy, so like a 20-liter water bottle, basically, kind of like the water bottles you'd get from a supermarket, that sort of size. And yeah, it bubbled away for a week, and I put it into bottles and shared it with my friends, and we got horribly drunk on it. And it was just awful, just awful. I'd love to be able to go back and just drink it just to see how bad it was. I remember at the time having very little taste for good beer anyway, and thinking this is terrible. This is not good.
But But instead of saying, well, that's a hell with that, you kept making it and people kept drinking it?
Not immediately. Like I potted away with it throughout my university life, and then, living in New Zealand, I sort of homebrew from time to time. And to be fair, it wasn't until I moved to Canada in 2010 and moved into Calgary, and the brew scene here was actually a little bit better, and there was just seemed to be better access to better quality ingredients, which helped things along substantially, which was great. Like we're right in in Alberta, we grow a lot of barley and wheat, so you get really good grain product. And then just across the borders where most of the hops from around the world come from, so you have really good hops as well. And surprisingly, Calgary has really good water for homebrewing. You don't actually have to do much other than filter it, and if you want to, you can add a few salts just to change the flavor profile of the water, but otherwise it's good to go. Pure rocky water, good to roll.
Are you going to invest all your money and time and sadness into farm equipment and start planting barley and stuff up at your property?
I should, right?
And just,
I don't know.
Just really hate what you do?
After squishing around in that for like 2 months over summertime, and then like the bog field that it was, it's like nothing's growing in here. I'm fine. I'll leave that to the experts. Fair
enough. How was your time at the property last weekend? I was going to ask you.
It was good. It was kind of weird. The thing that threw me off, the first couple of hours I was like, shit, it's cold. So I had to get used to that. And like by the time you put some clothes on, it was fine. But the thing that really threw me off was how dark it got so early. And I was up there by myself, so I didn't really have anything to do. It's like, well, it's 4:00 and it's almost dark. I ended up going to bed at like 7:30 and sort of slept right through the night. So it was fun.
Yeah.
It was beautiful out there during the day, like not a lick of wind. The first day there was beautiful blue sky. It was lovely. Good times. Saw one vehicle the whole time I was up there, and that was it.
They weren't going out of my fucking place, were they?
Oh, probably. They were coming out with it. They didn't have a quad when they went in, but they had a couple when they left. I don't know where they got them.
That sounds about right. Good luck getting those started, fuckers.
Yeah. Joke's on you. Scott, I hear your quad might need some chunkier tires on it.
It might need tires that are on the right way. They have a problem where they're on the wrong way as well.
Just drive backwards the whole time, you'll be fine.
Well, I actually think that's why they're on backwards. I think they used to use the winch to do something a lot.
Yeah, the quarter centimeter of tread you have is going the wrong direction. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's what's stopping it.
I've never seen so much winching in my life.
It was a lot. It was a lot of winching.
When that pond freezes over, you'll be able to get out there and do some donuts on it. It's going to be great.
I did tow one of your quads out at the end. We didn't get that on tape, I'd like to point out.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Did you? But you missed that. You were going so slow and with such little traction that I couldn't ride the quad while you pulled it out. I had to run beside
It's
it.
true. It's true. You were like mush as I was driving my bald quad. Yeah.
I was trying to yell at you to go faster, but you wouldn't. So it kept hitting trees because I couldn't jump on it here and put.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was running though.
Well done.
Yeah, we didn't get that, but that happened. Anyway, not to detract from talking about home brewing,
Right.
but okay. So you diddled about with it through your university years. You were a university diddler, as
Weren't we all?
they called you, right?
Yeah.
And then what? So you got to Calgary.
And then he was
The
kicked out of
ingredients
the
were
country.
better. What kind of made you be like, I'm going to give this like a little bit more effort, funding. I'm going to buy equipment and
Yeah. So there's a club in Calgary. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's the Cowtown Yeast Wranglers, which is the best name.
Fuck is it? Yes.
It's just like it's
holy
like
shit,
Calgary from the 1990s, and it's like the Yeast Wranglers. It's-
Wonderful.
man! If that's not a
Good
group of
one.
gynecologists,
Yeah.
then
Whoa.
Yeah. So I joined this club, and there was some good brewers there, and I was surprised that people were making beer in that club that actually tasted like beer you'd buy in a shop. So it didn't take long to realize with talking to them, there's just a couple of quick and easy fixes that I could do with my processes, which I did, and were able to make the beer taste good. And it's as simple as like temperature control when you're fermenting, keeping a nice steady temperature and the right temperature, not just put it in your basement and hope that it ferments at 15 degrees or whatever. Nice healthy yeast, and then keeping things really, really clean. Those are really the only three things you needed to do, and I wasn't really doing any of those. So once I started,
Matt, our mead's going to taste like shit.
Yep. It's sitting in the
It
basement.
is sitting in the
hoping-
basement. I am not temperature controlling it. It's in the furnace room because it's the warmest room I got. And I'm pretty sure I did sterilize it, but then I also tried to test the alcohol content and just dumped the rest of the stuff back in, which after I read is I don't do that. So
all the stuff that's being exposed to the oxygen in the air. Yeah.
that's interesting because like your early experiments, Haydon, my dad used to brew his own beer because he was cheap. And from what I remember, it almost made me never want to drink anything ever again because it tasted like toilet sock water.
Yeah.
And this
It was just awful.
his supplement to that with store-bought beer at the time, so this is 20 some years ago, was Co-op Gold Lager.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you say oh yeah because now it's actually made by somebody back then.
Right.
Co-op Pilsner, Co-op brand Pilsner, man. That's my sleeper beer. That's the one that I always recommend for people if they're drinking, if they just want bucket can beer. It's like it's made by Big Rock. It's good quality. It tastes good.
Have you tried Bronc?
I have. That's actually decent too. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, because I was going through the store and it was on for $18. I was like, that's $1.30 a can. I guess I'm just getting this now. And it's made in Calgary. I was like, I'd never heard of these guys. And it was drinkable.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I drank a lot of it one night and I definitely still tasted Bronc. There was a Bronc taste the next day. For sure, for most of the day. But yeah, buck of beer.
That's good. And the folks that make that beer, it's made out of a place in town called Last Spike Brewing Company, and they're a contract facility, so they're just this massive, massive warehouse with these ridiculously large fermenter tanks that make a lot of beer for a lot of people.
Oh, really?
Huh.
Do you know who they make beer for, or is that like industry
Yeah,
secrets
there's
you can't
lots of,
spill?
we dabbled with them. They've made a couple of batches of beer for us. We just wanted to see if they could replicate stuff we liked at Cabin, and it wasn't quite where we wanted it to be, so we pulled away from that. We make it all in-house now. But I know it's a standard joke. Every time you turn up to like drop kegs off or something, you'd be like, hey, there's that guy from that brewery, and that's that lady from that brewery. And, geez, is anyone making their own beer anymore, or is it all just being made here? It's pretty
Crazy.
wild. It's big. Like, if you've been into Cabin, those big fermenters we've got at the back, they're 40 hectoliter ones, which in my mind are big. They're like, fuck, I don't know, twice as tall, 3 times as tall as me. They've got ones there that are 400 hectoliters, so 10 times the size of that. And they are
Holy shit.
Jesus Christ.
it's a big facility.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting.
So is their business model like just volume? They just brew for kind of anybody who pays a penny, and that's it? Or?
I think they have a lot of. They set up at a time about 4 or 5 years ago where I think it was when the NDP government was in, and there were quite strict rules around importing beer. So, for example, someone like Steam Whistle couldn't import beer into Alberta without paying a big surcharge, but if they brewed it in Alberta, they wouldn't have to pay that big tax. So a lot of people were starting to look to say, well, shit, let's make it in Alberta, and this place set up, and then the rules changed again. But they're still busy as far as I know. Like, and talking to folks, it's a long wait list to get in there. And, there's some breweries out there like Long Hop Brewing, if you've heard of them. They solely run their model on contracting, so they don't have a bricks and mortar brewery. They just do everything through contract brewing. They get other people to make it for them.
So they just like come up with a recipe, try it on small scale, and then be like, scale it up, I guess.
Yep. Yeah,
Really?
and then they make it for them. So the money is there's not a lot of money to be made in that model, but at least you're getting your name out there, and he's doing a good job. And I'm sure one day he'll have his own actual brewery of his own that he can do his thing. But yeah,
well, they're kicking out their own beer now, right? So I mean,
yeah, they're doing good.
Hey Matt, maybe they can brew our mead for us.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Not put it in the furnace room.
Call
In the
it furnace room mead is what you should call it.
It's just gonna be bad. That's all.
Haydon, are there any beers from when you were home brewing that are now Cabin mainstream beers, or beers at Cabin?
There's a couple. One, we do an English mild every year, which we'll be releasing again in January. So that's a light alcohol, 3.5% sort of English dark pub ale. And that was a homebrew recipe of mine. And then we do that weird beer. It's called Cool As. It's a lime and cucumber.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. That's a good beer.
That was the first beer of yours I ever had. You brought it to the Screaming Toddlers picnic in a little keg, put it in a little tent, and I tried it, and I was like, fuck me dead. This is amazing.
I was telling someone about that the other day, about how, I took a keg of homebrew and the kids' like little red wagon and wheeled it into the picnic area, and then set up one of those IKEA tents and put the keg inside the tent.
That was it. And it was that one. Because I was like, I drank more than I should have in public space with my children. But
when you're in your 30s, you sort of start to dread somebody going, hey, do you want to try this beer I made? Yeah. And so when one of the times that we were over at your house with you and Jill for dinner before any of us had kids, and you said that, I remember thinking, January and I were both thinking, oh God, but it was good. It was actually good. And we were really, really surprised. Yeah.
So
how did you go about figuring out recipes to get there? Like, how did you get from sock beer to good beer in the?
There's this thing you guys may have heard of. It's called the internet, and you can find stuff on there. That's one place.
Hold on.
Whoa!
What?
We don't have any. Everybody?
Yeah. The books up here, there's lots of good books on homebrew, and there's a couple of American guys especially, they're sort of like the grandfathers of homebrew, and they release these books. And there's one particular one that's called Brewing Classic Styles, and it's written using recipes that have actually won national awards for homebrewing. And it's like, if you brew this beer exactly like this, it will do well. And most homebrewers get into that, and they'll start using those recipes. But then once you've it's like anything, like when you're cooking, it's like, okay, now I know how to do scrambled eggs. So I might make an omelette next. I might throw some chives in it. I might do whatever. I don't know. So once you've got those basics down, then you start playing around with stuff, and that's where you end up with stuff like the cucumber, lime, sour, salty beer. Which
are you saying a scrambled egg and chive beer is coming out next?
Yeah, delicious breakfast.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? We've just commissioned our pilot system at Cabin for the first time. We'd originally planned to do it when we opened, and we never did it. And it's a small brew system that we can make 1 50-liter keg of beer at a time. So that's now up and running as of last week. So for 2023, we're going to start pumping out some weird and wacky ones. So all those really crazy ideas that people have, it's like, put it on the pilot system. Like we did an April Fool's gag last year at doing a hot dog water beer. So basically do like a big wiener boil a bunch of hot dogs and use that water and turn it into a beer. And we
that's
branded it, and we did this like April Fool's joke. Said, come and get it. And people actually did come in and try and buy it.
Did you?
This year we might actually just make it, just for shits and giggles.
You should.
Awesome.
It's the worst it can go.
I know that because I'm disgusting.
Yeah.
You don't have to even boil your own hot dog, Darren. You can just drink it.
Finally, someone else is going to make my beer recipe. This is amazing.
So we like to talk about tools on this show sometimes because a lot of our stuff is broken. And so I'm wondering, like, what was the essential getting started gear for home brewing for you?
Right. So there's some really basic stuff. The most essential ones probably you would have seen in the carboys, the containers that hold the liquid. That's the most important thing. Because really you can go to a home brew store and get everything pre-made for you. You can get like the grain milled in advance for it. You can have the hop pellets big enough. Like everything can be done for you. But like anything, you can get as tricky as you want. Like I grow my own hops, and I've used them a couple of times in brewing. So you can grow your own hops, you could grow your own grain, you could do all this technical stuff. But really, once you've got a fermenter, something to measure the alcohol is really useful. You don't have to have it. You can just sort of just wing it like you guys and see how strong it ends up at the back end.
Well, yeah, like I was telling you just before, the thing I learned, because I picked up some guys' homebrew kits that we could try this mead, and it came with a hydrometer, and I was like, fuck yeah, now I can actually, because I've tried a few things before. I think we talked about it on here a little bit, but I never knew what the alcohol content was. So I was like, yeah, this is sweet. So I went to test it the other day. And what I didn't know is that in order to test the alcohol content, you're supposed to use the hydrometer before you ferment and then after you ferment and then subtract the two numbers, which I never did. So now we're once again going to be playing a guessing game. So
it's a fun game.
But the hydrometer, I think, is cool if you have the wherewithal to, like you said, use that other tool called the internets and actually take 5 seconds to read how to use the fucking thing.
Yeah. And it's super. For the three people out there listening who might not know what a hydrometer is, it basically just three.
Woo! Hot damn!
We're on.
Yeah.
It's basically just a weight, right? That sits in the liquid, and the liquid's got sugar in it, so it's thick. So it'll sit there, and then as the sugar gets eaten by the yeast and gets turned into alcohol, it slowly sinks until the sugar's all gone. And then you just take the top measurement and the bottom measurement and do the difference. So you say, right, it started at 1040, ended up at 1010. That means it's like 5% alcohol. So it's pretty clear. So it's super simple. So that's handy especially if you're serving it to other people. I made one beer once when I screwed up the original reading, and I was like, oh wow, this beer only came out at like 3.5%. That's crazy. And we took it to a community association gathering, and I was just like forcing it on everyone. It's like, don't worry, you can have a couple of pints. It's only 3.5% alcohol. It was actually about 6% alcohol. So people were like, oh, are you sure this is only 3.5%? It's like, yeah, it's only 3.5%. And then that's when you're like, well, I had 3 pints, and you know what? I feel pretty boozed. I don't think that was 3.5%. So I went back and looked at my calculations and say, yeah, no, I screwed that up. That's definitely not. So that's useful.
Jesus, I hope you didn't just cop to a crime of some sort that we don't know about.
Yeah, I don't know. Who knows what will come out? the other thing is, I think I was telling Darren sometime back, was just the temperature control of fermentation. Like yeast can be pretty finicky, so it doesn't like surprises. If it gets really hot or really cold really quickly, the yeast just like and dies. So you have to, or it'll start throwing off weird aromas and flavors. So you want to try and keep it as constant as possible. And you can get a really simple temperature control mechanism. I used an old fridge, and you put it in the fridge, you wrap it with this little heat blanket, and then you turn the fridge on, and then you just set it's just a temp controller. So you say, I want it to stay between 19 and 20 degrees, and then it'll either click on the heater or click on the fridge, depending on whether it's hot or cold outside.
Oh, interesting.
And that'll just keep it consistent the whole way through.
So can you visually tell when the yeast is unhappy temperature-wise, like whether like if it's too hot or too cold? Does it do anything different? Is there anything like
No.
we're like, oh, it's definitely
Visually.
too hot because the yeast is like mega bubbling, or it's definitely too cold because there's ice on the top or whatever? But
yeah, not visually. You'll see if it gets too hot. As it gets colder, the yeast will slow down, it will bubble slowly, and as it heats up, it'll bubble faster. But it just depends. It depends on how much yeast is in it, will govern how fast it will bubble away. But really, you can only tell once the fermentation is finishing off and you start smelling and tasting it, and you'll notice you'll know straight away whether there's something wrong there. It'll be
and the bubbling you're talking about is in that stopper that you put in the carboy, that you fill with half with water.
Yep.
And then it bubbles as the CO2
gets pushed out. Yeah, because all the yeast just the yeast eats the sugar, and then it just farts out CO2 and alcohol. That's basically all it does. And the CO2 has to go somewhere. If you don't have one of those little airlocks to let the air out, it'll eventually explode, or something will go horribly wrong there.
What a blessed little creature yeast is. Here's to yeast. Thanks, yeast.
Lovely?
It just has one purpose, to just puke out alcohol. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that makes sense though, because I went and I checked on our mead that we were making, and I just peeked in. Nothing was really happening. The odd bubble, I think I told you, Haydon.
Yeah.
So then I went in and I undid a few buttons in my shirt, and that thing just started bubbling like a motherfucker. It just like,
yeah.
It was like the hotness.
When it gets scared, it's like when yeast get scared, it just starts panicking.
Matt wishes he had died on the couch today. He's like, fucking hell.
I got out of bed for this.
Got her to bed for this.
So a weird thing about yeast, and I don't want to blab on about yeast the whole time, but it's like it's everywhere, right? It's like it's on your skin, it's on your computer screen, whatever. And you can harvest. You need particular.
It's in your throat if you make bad choices.
Yeah, it can be anywhere. So you can make beer out of just about anything that's in there. You don't actually have to add yeast, but it helps to have the right kind of yeast, because there's some pretty bad stuff out there. And like the yeast you'd pick up in your house is just, it's gross. It'll throw off bad smells and flavors, and there's hundreds, thousands.
That's my yeast you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, your yeast, I'm sure, is quite fine.
That's my favorite infection. You leave that alone. Haydon, do you know what the difference between brewing? I'm sure you do. So maybe you can just answer this for me. The difference between beer yeast and wine yeast.
Let me think. I can't actually. I don't know.
There's no thinking on this show. Come on.
Yeah. I know it's different, but I don't know why. I don't know what the difference is.
That's the answer I had, so that's good enough for me.
Yeah, all yeast behaves slightly differently, and I know most wine yeast, they just normally take the natural yeast that's sitting on the skin of the wine rather than adding yeast to it, unless you're doing a homebrew wine.
Is there like a whole yeast market that exists then?
Oh, it's insane. Like the laboratories that run this stuff, it's like a ton of it is super proprietary. Like you'll get yeast strains that will throw off notes of banana and cloves and like really tropical white winey notes. It's weird. And there's one of the biggest ones in the States. It's called White Labs yeast. And if you go down there, they've got a brewery in there as well. And what they'll do is they'll like make a beer. It's the same beer. It's like brewed like 5 different beers, all the exact same base beer, but they've used different yeast in all 5 of them. And you can go through and taste them. So the base beer is the same, and then the only difference is the yeast in there. And the difference can be wild. It can be really, really different. It can be subtle, or it can be really, really different.
Different in like a good way, or different in like a... bad yeast.
Different in just a weird way. It's like you can use different yeast for any beer that you want to, but they're all going to throw different character off. Like they might make the beer drier, or they might make it sort of like the yeast we use for this beer. It's a hazy beer, so it like keeps lots of particles in suspension. Whereas some yeast is super aggressive and it will pull all that stuff out of suspension and make it nice and clear, like a lager beer. So yeah, it's all crazy.
Speaking of hazy, I just pulled out a Banded Peak hazy IPA that I'm going to open next. I was going to keep it close to home and open a Hocktail Brewery one from Rimby. But then I saw that it was only 4.5%, so I put it back in the fridge.
Nope. I think that one's not.
Okay, I have a question about beer for you, Haydon, and it's about one of your beers specifically.
Oh, okay. Ask away.
As soon as I finish pouring someone else's beer. Hang on. Wait for it. Okay. You recently gave me... Now, I do like to try all your beers, but I honestly don't get the chance to try them all because I'm poor. And you gave us one when we were out over at your place, up by our place. And it was a rice beer. Was it the Jasmine? Is that the one?
Oh yeah, Jasmine. Yeah, the Zen Garden Jasmine.
The Zen Garden. That's the one. So, first of all, probably one of the best beers I've had. I'm going to say that, and it's not just because you decided to come tonight. It honestly, I used to be
favorite too.
I used to be a big Budweiser guy, and I felt like the rice had a different, because Budweiser's a rice beer.
Yeah.
It had it sat different. You could have more of it. It was a little easier drinking. There was just something about like that. And that's kind of, not to compare yours to Budweiser, which I'm doing right now, but it had that same feeling. Like my wife doesn't drink a lot of beer and she crushed that thing like it was my soul. And
your soul's been gone a long time.
Yeah, we won't go there. So my question is, what really is the difference? Like, what makes a rice beer so different than a wheat beer? And you can't say because it's rice, but like, what about the rice versus the wheat is kind of gives it that really sort of differentiation that you can physically taste and feel when you're drinking it?
So it's like, you can, just backtracking a bit, you can add a bunch of different grains to beer. You can use spelt, rye, wheat, barley, basically anything that has a bit of sugar in it. Corn is a big popular one in North American lagers.
Really?
Yeah. Use
like
corn.
Like a bourbon beer? That's what I got out of that.
Just have a shot of bourbon with it. I don't know. But yeah, rice is, it really dries it out. So it has no gluten in it, right? So you don't get all... Does it have gluten? Jeez, you've put me on the spot here. I don't think it does.
It doesn't because...
It doesn't, does it? Yeah.
No, gluten-free people drink Budweiser.
Yeah. So every grain that you use in beer, the yeast eats certain grains in a different way, or the sugars you get from grain in a certain way. So with rice, the yeast just destroys itself, pulls out just about everything, so it becomes very dry, very light, very crisp, very drinkable. With barley, it leaves a lot behind, so it leaves color, it leaves sugars, it leaves sort of these long, what are they called, long chain sort of dextrins in the beer that make it quite sort of thick and chewy. And a lot of people react badly to gluten as well, whereas rice just really, really dries the beer out. So we wanted to try that out just because it was a good, it's a palate crusher. Budweiser makes a lot of money and a lot of beer out of a rice beer, so it can't be that bad. We used a jasmine rice just for a little slight different flavor profile and aroma profile in it. But you're right, it came out super well. It's just like, I remember I drank it, it was just like, it doesn't taste like much. There's not much going on. But then when you crush a couple on a hot day, I think that day where I gave one to you and Nick, it was like 30 degrees or something. We were out there playing cornhole, and it's like, this was
it was plus 30, that's for sure.
Time, yeah. Whereas if you try
we had just our kids had just contracted beaver fever from the creek.
Yeah.
Because they were in it, and I think someone was saying like I think Brooke got it in her mouth. Maverick just face planted right under the water, damn near drowned.
The water gun.
What's Lisa? Is it Owen? Is that Lisa's?
Owen.
Yeah. He for sure drank something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was after that we were all still able to make it to your place without shitting all over the place like the cows did. But yeah, that's when it was. It was hot as fuck, and it was like extremely drinkable.
Yeah.
Delightful summer beer.
Yeah. And we make the other one we make is the Dirty Hipster, which is a collaboration we did with Routine Deodorant, and that's a rice lager as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, really? That one's a rice beer.
That's a rice beer. Yeah. So that's actually a funny story. So if you,
I like that one too. I've seen a trend.
I brought it hunting with us on the trip where Silas gave us all the play.
Right.
Yeah. This is a perfect story for this group because like you got together with Routine. If you guys didn't know about it, it's like a natural deodorant company based out of Calgary. Two sisters own it. Super successful. Great job. But all of their deodorant is very aromatic. Lots of crazy smells going on. And we talked about getting together to do a collaboration. So we were on our end going, how are we going to put patchouli into a beer and all of these different freaking...
How are we going to make a beer out of deodorant?
I know. And then they turn up and they're like, you know what? We just want... Can you make like a Pabst? We want a Pabst. Can we do a Pabst? And we're like, yeah, we can do something like a Pabst. So that beer is very much modeled like Pabst. And Matt, I see you're crushing a Pabst right there. And there's a reason why that beer is so popular. It's like small format, super easily drinkable. It's like appeals to just about everybody. So we just decided to replicate something like that. That's the fun thing about being a craft brewer like that too. You can go wild with hops and make them big and strong and everything. But at the same time, you can go, you know what? Let's just make a Pabst and have our own little version of it.
So what made you...
There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
I crush hundreds of these things. They're wonderful.
Yeah, that might be the thing that's wrong with them, Matt.
You are sending all your money to some rich prick down the States rather than supporting your local industry, but that's a different kettle of fish. We won't go down there. Right?
Yeah, but buck a can, buddy. You said it yourself.
You need to support your Tesco and industry, for goodness sake.
The thing that appeals to me about Budweiser and Pabst I only ever have those really when we're out on our trips, when we're out hunting, when we do our spring trip, and those beers kind of maintain.
You mean when we're drinking in excess? You only have them when we're excessively imbibing.
Exactly, and they're good at just about any temperature in that situation. They're usually pretty cold because we go at terrible times of the year and we don't really know how to look after ourselves in the wilderness. And so we freeze and the beer gets cold.
We have a cooler. We made a cooler.
That's true.
So the beer doesn't.
So the beer doesn't freeze. Yeah, the beer was safe, I suppose. But they're good at any temperature. That's what I like about them when they're light like that.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not too strong either. Holy, you might get yourself a big 8% stout and then crush a tall can of that and then try and line up to shoot something good.
Yeah,
get onto a bike, can't do anything.
One of the worst decisions.
We don't line up to shoot things.
One of the worst decisions I ever made was I made a night out of drinking IPAs. A few of them were cabins, and then I branched out and did there's a what's the panda one?
The Trash Panda.
Trash Panda.
Yeah.
Anyway, the next day, I've never wished for death more in my life than that morning. And the rest of that day.
Hops are an antiseptic. It's got to be good for you, right? Eventually.
Oh, I was healthy, but my head felt like it was about to blow off.
Oh, yeah.
My head felt like Scott was behind me with a shotgun and a grouse flew in front of my face.
Yeah, I would shoot at that grouse again every time. I just want to be clear.
For no one that's heard that story, we were out hunting once. And my brother and I were walking out front. And Scott was probably about 10 meters behind us. He had his shotgun, and a couple grouse flew up right in front of us, but not up, more across. So
it was across.
We were the in between parts, and from behind us, you just heard. And my brother and I was like, "Fuck!" And we just literally just buckled our legs and dropped. Tried to just Mission Impossible right to the ground, and then bam, bam.
I got one. It was great.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. I waited till you guys were down before I shot. I knew what I was doing.
Sure you did.
You lost your chance. They're onto you now. Now you never get to go behind. You always have to stand in front.
Yeah, that's right.
My wife heard that story, and she's terrified at the idea of you going hunting with this guy.
It's fine.
So she's always checking in. She's like, "Are you
Are you
okay?"
dead?
That's really funny because when I get back from those trips, I'm always like, man, Matt's wife texts him a lot. And now I know why.
Is it just the same text over and over?
Yeah,
Alive.
checking.
Why again?
Still alive.
Just pulse check.
There's actually a line on my life insurance policy that says, "Was he scotted?"
I have the same one about you. Yeah.
Okay, so easy drinking beers. You've done those. You did a collab. What are the sort of requirements that you guys think about when you're doing? Because it's not like, obviously they weren't your first collaboration. You've done a bunch of collaborations before. What do you look for in a collaboration? Because I mean, obviously, like you'd think like, oh, I'm going to collaborate with another brewery, but clearly on Dirty Hipster, you did not. You collaborated with a deodorant company. So like when you think about doing a collab, what's the sort of thing that gets you like, yeah, you know what, we should do that. That'd be a good fit.
It's a funny one. We look at things like, is there synergy in the branding almost? It's like, do we like what they're doing? It's sort of like dating. It's like, I like the look of your branding, and I'm like, I kind of like the look of your branding, and could we make this work together?
Is there a collab app where you're like swiping left and right?
Yeah, exactly. We could start this, a whole brewery collaboration dating app. It's like,
no.
Yeah, we always get together and have a quick meeting and just talk and say, like, what are you looking for out of this? What are we looking for? And some people want to, we've spoken to some companies and they come and they're like, we want to, let's make some money out of this and we can do this. It's like, it's not really why we do collabs. Collabs are more around just having fun, joining forces with another company who's got sort of like values and similar values to what we've got going on. And we like to try and tap into another market, which is kind of close to where we are, but people that might not know us quite yet, or they might drink alcohol but might not drink this particular craft beer. And something like that with routine deodorant was a good one. Like, we saw a lot of people coming in and buying our beer based on the fact that they already knew the deodorant really well.
Were they selling it in their store?
They can't, so legally they cannot, so they have to sell it through us. But we brought their deodorant in and we sold it through our store, and they came in and did a pop-up one day, and a lot of social media back and forth as well. So we look at all those sorts of things. And then when it comes with a brewery itself, it's like, it's just people you want to hang out with and drink for a day, because really that's what a collaboration brew is. One person brews the beer and then everyone else gets together and eats lunch and drinks beer and shoots shit. It's good fun.
So like values, have fun, drink beer all day. Just saying.
A lot of the boxes checked.
Yeah, I definitely want to tap into your market, into your 3 followers. I do want to.
Yeah, you'll get 100% of our audience to drink.
Just call it tax write-off. It's fucking win. Zero. Net zero beer.
Net zero beer.
It's the name already.
Going back to your homebrew, Haydon, so you had like a few that made it into, your cabin stream. What was the tipping point for you where you were like, I'm making some good beer at home. I brought some to a kid's party and the parents all got drunk. It was great.
Yeah.
Like, at what point were you like, you know what? I really want to make 2 questions, I guess, 2 parts. One is, how did you convince your wife to get a multi-tap keg system in your living room? This is my first question, because just asking for a friend. 2, what was that tipping point where you went from like, I'm making some pretty good beer, let's make a go of this and take it to the next level?
Yeah. So the first one, getting the multi-tap thing. So yeah, I had when my homebrewing really got serious, I had a 6-tap keezer, it's called. So it's a chest freezer that gets turned into a keg machine, so you can fit 6 skinny homebrew kegs in there. It helps that you marry someone who likes beer, like my wife Jill does. She loves beer, so she was my biggest supporter to get me out there early on a Saturday morning and brew more beer, because we were like burning through it faster than we can make it. So
interesting. I'm gonna start a gin company then.
Yeah. That part was easy. The part where we decided that we'd make a go of it was like 2 things. One was it was basically a midlife crisis, right? I got to 40 years old, and I was like, I worked in communications for a big government company, a big government organization. Like, I cannot do this for another 20, 25 years. This is not where I want to. I love brewing. Maybe I can make some money off that. And then we also had a couple of guys, friends who are now my business partners at Cabin. They were also at the Cowtown New Stranglers making really good beer. There's Jonas, he was at Wild Rose at the time as a brewer, so he was already making.
Right.
He knew how to brew on a big system. And then Darren Sayers, he was the other partner. He was a fantastic brewer as well, but he was a mechanic for Mercedes, so he like owned every tool and can build stuff and drive anything and do anything. And then I had the communications marketing background, so we were looking at the market, and at that point, craft beer was exploding in Alberta. There were already a bunch of breweries that had opened up. And honestly, like looking back now, it's like it was a no-brainer. We mulled over it for forever and a day, and it's like, oh, I don't know, I have to spend money, and it's a big risk. And then I ended up listening. The one thing that tipped me, you'd say about the tipping point, there was one particular thing that tipped me, and I was on the train on the way to work. We're going past Stampede Grounds, and I was listening to a beer podcast, and it was an interview with Jim Cook, who was the owner of the Boston Beer Company, or the founder of the Boston Beer Company. And he's talking about his career, and, they're super successful. And he's like, the question was, wasn't it risky starting a brewery back then? He's like, you know what? The biggest risk is not putting your life and your family and your house on the line. The biggest risk is getting to 70 years old and looking back and going, shit, I should have done something else, or I'm not happy with where I've done. He said that's a much bigger risk in the big scheme of things. So he's like, for anyone out there who's even thinking about doing it, if you can make it work, make it work. And I was like, shit, holding onto the rail back and forth, homeless person asleep right there. It's like, you know what, let's do this. And that was we were almost there, and that was kind of the tipping point that got us over there. And then we spent like a year and a half trying to raise money and find property and get bank loans and all that fun stuff. And
that homeless person was Matt Lucas.
I knew I'd seen her somewhere. In the Hollywood telling of the story, that is how it's going to work. And then they met again on a podcast.
So that long ago, riding the train and having a homeless person sleep, it should be an even easier discussion for somebody today, because there's no homeless people sleeping. It's meth heads fucking just cracked out in the corner.
Shooting flares, doing all their fun stuff. Oh, boy.
Yeah, whatever it takes.
Matt,
Downtown's great. Don't knock it.
Have you been walking past my work lately, Matt? Is that... So
way to go. Centralize your train system to drive it through Crack Alley.
Yeah. When's the train system going to Wetaskiwin anyway? That's what I want to know.
We don't want it out there, Haydon. We don't.
Oh, big plans from a brewery camp out at the end of our road. It's going to be great.
Have you been to the distillery? Long shot?
I have not. No, I drove past it over summertime there, and it's like, I don't know. There was do you mean the one pretty close to Winfield?
Yeah. East of Winfield.
I drove past, I slowed down a bit, and there was a driver that went in. I couldn't see where it went. I'm like, I don't know. I might not come out alive, so I didn't go in. How was it?
It was all right. Like Matt and I and our recently dead but not dead friend Alan went, and like the drinks were good. Food was fine. Like as far as like, because like our place is like it's out in the middle of nowhere, really. Like, when you're in the biggest sort of center near you is Rimby. And that's far away. I mean, we're out there, and for a place that's out there, like it was really nice, really well done.
That's great.
Yeah, like the liquor was good. it was pretty much on par. Like you walk in and, you know, we drove in and there's a John Deere Gator sitting in the yard. And Matt and I joked,
Yes.
we're like, betcha that's like doesn't belong here. And some guy drove it here from his farm, and Alan's like, yep, him and his wife came here, and I watched him pull in about 2 minutes ago. So it's like, like for the rural community, it's absolutely like it's a gem. Their prices are fantastic. And
I'd
like
say their overheads are probably pretty low for making spirits out in the middle of nowhere for the per square foot.
Totally, yeah. And their little restaurant's nice. It looks like a fun. They got the world's largest fucking patio. Like I think it wraps around the place twice with like 72 tables and 59 heaters. It's incredible.
Whole quarter section of patio, just all
whole
patio.
Quarter section of heaters and patio tables. Yeah.
Did you eat there when you were there, Darren?
Yep.
Matt? Yeah.
Yeah.
The food
Did they
was
do
good.
like?
It was okay.
Yes.
It was a full restaurant.
Like they had like food, not like small
Yeah.
plates or anything like that. Like it was.
Oh man.
I think I had a pulled pork sandwich, and you had poutine, and
Yeah, I had a poutine. It was totally fine. It was great.
That sounds great.
Yeah, it was good.
We have to get out the summer.
their facility is fabulous. Like it looks like kind of a shop with obviously a massive patio that wraps around it. It's all tin. You drive down the driveway, and it's a little creepy because you're basically driving down into the valley of their, I guess, a homestead or an old homestead.
For sure, yeah.
Huh.
Like you said,
They've
like
cleared up-
it's a. If you don't know that it's there, like you're probably not going to take that road in because you're like, this looks like it might be it, but it also looks like that movie.
That's
John Voight.
Went through my mind when I slowed down out the front. I'm like, you know what?
You know what? I do have a pretty mouth, and I'm gonna just keep it. But no, yeah, it's a great little place. Okay, so at 40, you had a midlife crisis and made a brewery, which is amazing because at 40, I got arthritis, and that's my claim.
It would have been cheaper if I just bought a sports car and like did that, but no, I bought stainless steel vats instead, and it was a lot more expensive.
Can't argue with that.
Hey, at least they pay some money now instead of a sports car.
So you're listening to a podcast, and you're like, obviously, for people watching, no one's watching. If someone ever clicks this on YouTube, behind you is a clearly color-coded bookcase. My understanding is that you're a big book guy. Like, I was having lunch with Jill, and she's like, when you were up at the property, and she's like, "Hey, Haydon's up there scouting out a treehouse. He's read like 7 books on treehouses already." I was like, "Fucking hell! How many books did you read to start a brewery?"
Oh, like every book I could find about beer and just reading it up. Yeah, I like the color coding's weird. That was a pandemic thing. It's like, well, we're in lockdown for 2 weeks. I guess I'm not going anywhere. Why don't we tidy up these bookshelves and color code them? But I'm like, yeah, I'm an English lit major, and then I was a journalist, and I've always loved reading in books, and just the tactile piece of actually having a book is really nice. So I enjoy having that. It's good fun times.
So you don't have like a chemistry background or any of that other shit that would go along with?
Nope. I got nothing. I got no science background. I'm more like it's funny, with brewing, it's a weird thing. It's like half art, half science. You've got to have all the science down packed, otherwise the beer's just going to be terrible. But then you need that sort of artistic bent to be creative with the recipes and how you're marketing it and names and all that stuff. So that part always appealed to me.
When you're brewing at home, like before you start a cabin, you're obviously brewing it, you're making good beer. How do you prove yourself to, like, so your partner's Jonas, who's like an established brewmaster, right? Like you said, Darren Sayers is an amazing brewer. Like, how do you prove that you're good other than like, drink my beer? Like, did you submit your beers for like local awards or beer competitions, or like you kind of build your own kind of clout that way? Or is it just kind of like, no, I make really good beer. Here, try some. And if you're Scott, you're like, fucking hell, I don't want to try some.
Yeah, again. Yeah. No.
Last time it tasted like sock water from Co-op, which you've established is apparently pretty good beer for $1.
Yeah, you like the brew club meetups would always be, people chat up and bring their beer and you try, and you get a pretty good sense pretty quickly of who's doing a good job and who isn't. But there's a national homebrew circuit as well. So there's these competitions that happen on a regular basis, and you send your beer off, and they're judged by certified beer judges. So you know the results are good. And I think the last year that we all competed in it, all three of us, Darren, Jonas, and I, we all finished in the top. I think top 11, top 12 for the country.
Shit.
So we're all up
Oh,
there.
good.
We all knew we were making beer that was good. Like, we still didn't know that we could make it on a commercial level at that point, but we all knew from drinking it. Like, we were all certified beer judges as well, and as we're trying, we're like, yeah, this is good. I'd do this. And then you get into that little echo chamber and you're sharing it with people like, this is really good. You should start a brewery. And then the more times you hear it, the more times you think, maybe I should start a brewery. By the time you've heard it like 100 times, it's like, yeah, maybe we should start this brewery. But I know lots of people have gone down that path and haven't done a good job of it. And because there is more to it than just the beer. The beer is one part, but there's everything else that goes with it, right? It's like the ability to be able to build a shed and fix a machine and market a beer and sell a beer and all those sorts of things. As a saying, it's like it's actually the easiest thing is to make good beer. The hardest thing is to sell it, is to actually get it into people's hands and get them drinking it. So that's why, some of the big companies, they just have like armies of people out there selling all the time. They might not have the best beer, but they've got the best sales team, so they can always push more beer out the door as well.
You're not talking about AB InBev, are you?
Oh, no.
Okay, so you put together a bunch of money. You started this business called Cabin, and then how the fuck did you sell enough beer to keep it open initially, or did you have a contract initially, or can you fill me in? I don't know. I don't understand how you make that next massive leap. You can easily spend money. That's easy. I love doing that.
Yeah, it was just a real organic thing. So we started off really small. Like, that was our deliberate plan. Like, have a tap room. So we've got a tap room where we sell our beer directly. And that's where our biggest margins are, because we're literally just making the beer, putting it in kegs, pouring it into glasses and selling it to people at sort of market rates. And then we just slowly, and when we started, it was just the three of us, and we had one person that worked in the tap room. And, I'd go in and do cleaning and then help on the canning line and literally take the flats of beer out into the back of my Dodge Grand Caravan and then drive around the city. And while I'm delivering it, I'll see a liquor store across the road, so I'll go drop off samples over there as well. So it was kind of this just very slow, and it got busier and busier. And, as we sold more beer, we got a bit of money together, so we bought a couple more tanks and sort of just kept growing like that. We've sort of got to the point now where we're about as big as we want to get at this point, given the way the market and the economy is going. We're very happy with the size that we're at. It's big enough that we can make enough beer to support all the customers we have now, but we're not too big that we're going to be crippled if interest rates go up by 0.5%. So yeah, it's a slow organic thing. We didn't have a plan to be like, I want to sell out in 5 years' time and we have to sell this X number of beer. We just went with it. And really we knew, because the way that we set the brewery up, it was a pretty small space. The tap room generated a decent amount of revenue, and the overheads were small. So our worst case scenario, and the best thing for business planning is to have a global pandemic, because it makes you look at your business and go, okay, what's our worst case scenario? And our worst case scenario was basically, right, we sack everybody, the three of us go back to doing what we were doing before, which is making the beer, cleaning the toilets, doing all that sort of stuff. And it's like, yeah, we could make that work by doing a very, very small amount of beer.
But what actually happened was the pandemic hit. Everybody became full-blown craft beer alcoholics. Yeah. And you had to hire people, didn't you?
Orders just started going, brrr. It's like, yeah, okay. That poor Dodge Grand Caravan I used to have was just driving all over the city all the time. It's good times.
Amazing what happens when people are locked in their homes with their families for 2 years. They become fucking full-blown booze hounds.
Funny. Those were good times. I actually look back, it's the weirdest thing. I look back at the start of the pandemic and I've got fond memories, right? It's like people are baking bread and dropping it off. And, we saw sales boost up quite a bit because everyone wanted to get together and get behind local companies and make sure they weren't going out of business during that time. So it was good times. And now we're 3 years into the pandemic and it's still like, ugh. Anyway.
What was the volume size of your first batches of beer? Like, what was you say your brew sizes now are like, I missed it, something like 480 liters or something?
Oh yeah, I was comparing tanks to another brewery, but we've gone from, we started off with enough fermentation capacity to do, what was it, 80 hectoliter, which is about 8,000 liters of beer, and now we're up to, it's about 5 times that, I think. We
That's
still
a
have the
month of
same
beer
size
for Matt.
brew capacity, but we, yeah,
Went up.
it's crazy. I lose track. It's like we're brewing 5 days a week and we're packaging 4 days a week, so we're just constantly turning tanks over now. We've got 14 tanks now. We started off with 4, and now we have 14 larger tanks than when we started off with. That's kind of the good thing about a brewery. Like, you can size it up. It's like any kind of business when you just have to, okay, we've got an extra customer, we'll throw on another service team, we'll throw on an extra what have you. We're able to adapt pretty big. But there is a ceiling, and we're kind of at that ceiling now. It's come at a really good time. We were not quite sure if we want to get much bigger, because craft beer is sort of like a lot of things. Once you start getting too big, it becomes less attractive. If you start seeing it everywhere and it's becomes cheaper, it's like, well, it's not a special treat anymore. So there's something nice about being small and being nimble and being able to make decisions. We'll run into each other in a hallway and be like, hey, should we make this beer? I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do it. And then within a week it's in the tank and we're getting labels done for it. There's no bureaucracy involved. It's super fun and quick.
That does sound fun.
Yeah, it sounds like the dream.
Yeah, anything bigger and you start having like another set of managers, another set of people in there, and
Red tape.
all the crap goes along with it.
And I think I'm really, really sensitive there. I came from Alberta Health Services before I came. I talked about a big government agency, and that was like, they've got something like 130,000 people that work there. And trying to get anything done takes forever. It's just so many layers of people. And the idea of ever getting back to any sort of business or working in that environment where stuff takes so long to get done, it kills me. I'd rather stay smaller and being able to just do your own thing and do it fast and efficiently than go back to that model.
So going back, just to like bring it all around, if I'm a guy, which I'm not, let me rephrase that. Cut that out and fix that and edit.
You gotta leave it.
If I'm a person who's interested in home brewing and I'm doing good and I'm like, yeah, I've, like you said, I've been on the internet. I've read a few books. I've now sort of like think I can maybe do my own recipes, but I don't want to do my own brewery. Like you mentioned the carboy and the hydrometer and the stopper with the CO2 thing, but like, what do I need to make beer for my friends where I'm not going to look like an old miser trying to pinch a penny and everyone's going to lose interest in me as a human? It's like, what's your advice for home brewers that want to make good beer?
So you can actually, most beers come with like a sticker. You just peel the sticker off and then put your own sticker on and do that and say, hey.
I was going to make that joke and I'm like, nah.
Honestly, it's like anything else you do, right? Just practice. It was really good joining a club where it's a kind of a weird club. It's a real like hobbyist sort of, it's very nerdy in a way. People are super into it, but you learn a lot from that. So, read as much as you can, brew as much as you can. This is my best, probably the most fun bit of advice is drink as much beer as you can, just like broad styles from different people and different things.
Crushing it.
Yeah, you just keep doing it. And
not as well as Matt, but I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
I'm a monotone kind of guy. I like what I like.
That's not true. You have a keg of Far.
Yeah.
That's some pretty good beer.
Yeah.
But it's like, when you get to well, now I feel like I've drank a lot of beer in my career. Now what gets me excited is beer that has flaws to it or doesn't taste right, and that's where that helps you actually make good beer, is knowing what bad beer is. So you're sort of tracking down bad beer. And now every time I hear this, like, oh, did you try this beer? It's got got this flaw to it. I'll be like, no, I need to try this. I will be driving around the city. It used to be I'd be driving around the city looking for hype beer or the latest IPA. Now it's like, I need to find this beer that has this infection. I want to try it. I want to see what this tastes like.
Is this a thing where like shit beer is now going to become good beer because it tastes like shit? You know, like, you know, bad art is now good art, and like that oversized hoodie that you're wearing because it was your fat uncle's is now like super in style. Like shit beer is now going to be good beer.
There's a market.
You're a storm chaser, basically.
There was one recently. It was one of the breweries around in this area they recalled a bunch of beer. I was like, I need to get some of this before they record. And I drove around, I don't know, 5 or 6 shops, finally found a 6-pack of it. And then I'm on a message group with a bunch of other brewery owners as well. I say, hey, I've got a 6-pack of this beer. Does anyone want one? And I say, yeah, can you drop one off? Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much. So good.
So wait, you've taken a hobby of drinking wonderful beer and trying to make it perfect, and now you've gone surpassed that, and you're just like, I'm going to drink shit. I'm going to find it terrible.
The shittier the better.
You wrecked your hobby.
Incredible.
Yeah.
So are you guys are you going to release?
It's just proof that there's no such thing as bad beer.
Yeah.
Well, I would argue that a bit.
You can buy these kits. They're used. They're sensory testing kits, and you can buy them. They come with these little vials, and you just put a couple of drops into your beer. You get a very neutral sort of beer that doesn't have much other flavor going on, and then you can taste all the different. There's one that tastes like it smells like a soiled diaper. And there's one that smells like vomit. There's one that smells like feet. It's fascinating. It's
from Harry Potter.
That's where the next frontier of craft beer is, my friends.
Diaper beer. It's like the cheese that smells like diapers but tastes really good.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow, that's incredible.
You're trying to confuse your nose and your taste buds at the same time.
Yeah. You're like, oh, it's like blue cheese. It's like, oh, that's not right, but it smells so good.
Yeah,
it tastes like butter.
What am I doing? Yeah. Wow.
It's incredible. Again, circling back, it appears Matt's done a little bit of research, and everything we said is a lie. Budweiser is not overly gluten-free and not recommended for people with celiac disease. So everything you said about rice beers was a lie, which is fine. That's what you should expect from listening to this fucking piece of shit. It's just not
true. Yeah. And I didn't give you to repeat on this. I just wanted you to be more educated.
Fully transparent. I'm fine looking like an idiot. Also, look what I found in my fridge.
Oh.
The last Bronc beer.
The last Bronc. And I'm going to drink it right now. As we wrap this up, because I feel like we've possibly wasted a bunch of Haydon's time that he is sincerely regretting, but he's too nice of a person to say like, oh, my internet connection's gone bad and just hung up.
Yeah. Put the table. There's an earthquake down here. I don't know what happened.
Fuck these guys.
It's funny on the gluten thing. Just while you mentioned on that as well. So there is a lot of the beer that we make at Cabin. We use an agent that it's a fining agent. It'll actually make a beer nice and clear. So any of the beers that we make that are clear, it actually drops most of the gluten out of it as well. So we would never recommend it for celiac folks, but there are some people that they'll come in and just be like, I'm gluten intolerant.
Yes.
A little bit in there. It's not life or death. It's not super serious, but for them that really helps them as well. And most breweries do that now. It's like a double-edged sword in a good way. You get to make the beer nice and clear. Like a beer like that, the Bronc may well have that same sort of enzyme in it as well. And it just gathers all the gluten in together and chunks it out. But to go through
it's not just gluten. I'm sure those people are just generally intolerant to most things.
I'm just intolerant.
Tolerant to things that don't align with my current worldview about the power of crystals and whatnot. I realize I've alienated one of our 3 listeners.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. You go down on the YouTube rankings.
Some gypsy mom out there is like, fuck this show.
I'm very sorry to Caitlin in
the
British Columbia. Yeah.
The gypsy mommy blogger who no longer listens to this.
That's right. Went on one date with your brother and ended up listening to our podcast. That poor woman. Poor, sweet Caitlin.
Oh, and the podcast wasn't the worst of it.
Kevin, stop. Caitlin, stop listening, but drink Kevin. That's all I have to say.
Yeah.
It's gluten free. Yes.
You can't see the asterisk that I'm putting next to us, but there is an asterisk there.
Haydon, I want to thank you for losing basically a lot of your well-deserved life by coming on here.
I was just going to be doing school through the internet anyway. It's okay.
At least we got to drink some beer. And, yeah, I mean, I'm very impressed. Everyone I've introduced your beer to who hasn't had a chance to been there has been blown away. Our now not dead friend Alan, actually, when we first met him, it wasn't too long after they had a Christmas party, and he's like, "You guys should come." And it happened to be on the same day that I was having a Christmas party at work, and I had brought a skinny keg of Sunshine Rain to work.
Nice.
But thinking I was the hot shit, but everybody had brought massive amounts of everything, so a lot of it didn't get drunk because of just a general, debauchery. And so my next plan was I'm leaving here and I'm heading to Alan's place. So I grabbed myself an Uber and I dragged that keg into the Uber like a villain with a cat on my lap. And I'm going through and I get to Alan's place, or I get home and tuck the kids in. Then I grab that beer and I haul it down the alley, and it's raining and it's icy and it's terrible. And I get in and I'm the fucking neighbor and a half. I brought a fucking keg to an Irish party. If this doesn't get me good graces, nothing will. And I slap it down and I get the pump, but the journey it's had has not been kind to the keg. It's been sloshed about a little bit here and there and up and down. And basically what it did is it allowed me to pace myself throughout the night, because it was a big game of pour the foam and then let it settle, and then pour the foam and then let it settle. So it was a half pint at a time, and a lot of spillage. But long story short, Alan was not an IPA guy because he's Irish, and it's Guinness or shit lager or death. And I made him drink, he did that, and he's done Guinness, and I made him drink it, and he was blown away. And he told me, he's after that he had some more, possibly because I gave him a growler of it after as well, and he's purchased it on his own. He said it's one of the only IPAs he actually enjoys.
Good job. You're on the sales
for a guy that doesn't like IPA beers because he's from a country of potatoes and Guinness. So that all was to just say kudos to you for making one of the better IPAs in the world, I'll say, with my experience.
No one outside of 100 kilometers of where this was recorded is ever going to hear this, so you might as well say the world.
The world. Yeah. Well, everyone in Alberta thinks it's the world anyway, so.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you doing that, and I appreciate you guys having me on to drink some beer and talk about beer. I do this all day, every day anyway, and I could talk about it all night probably and bore the bejeebers out of you about yeast strains and flavor profiles and malt this and malt that.
Shit, we didn't get into yeast strains. All right. 6-hour episode coming up.
So much good fun.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you on, Haydon. And
if I ever homebrew any beer again, I'll be sure to share it with you and foist it.
That was actually going to be one of my questions. Do you homebrew anymore?
I do not. I do not.
Because you have a brewery. That makes a lot of sense.
I have essentially an unlimited supply of very good beer that I like drinking. I'm I could make it myself, but why would I? And literally the time it takes to make one batch of homebrew is the same time it takes for our brewers to brew 8,000 liters of beer. It's it makes
incredible.
Yeah.
That's fun. Yeah.
Has Jill started home brewing as a slight against you?
Yeah,
I want something
it's a
good.
home brew, and it's going to be better. And she probably would be. God damn it. No, he's not allowed to.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Haydon. We really
Yeah.
appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, Hayden Deuce.
Goodbye
Till
to
next
all
time,
of the
gentlemen.
listeners and viewers. It's nice to see you.
Thanks, nobody.
Yeah, thanks, nobody. See you in a couple of weeks.
No one can hear me screaming here.
That's our new motto. Nobody can hear me scream on the podcast.
That's right.
On that note.
Hey, nobodies, we now have merchandise. T-shirts, sweaters, hats, even a cup. Check it out at mutteringpines.com. And don't forget to listen to some of our other episodes where we actually have some interesting guests we were able to dupe onto coming onto our show. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, somewhere else. I don't know, wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time. Unless we are dead, which is highly possible.